The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you. Tonight we got a good show lined up for you, and we're waiting for my guest to get online. But until then, I'll introduce you to the rest of the people. Tonight we got with us Barbara Duncan.
Good evening, everybody.
And we got Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello. Happy Krampus night.
All right.
Or not.
That's exactly what it is, too. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about tonight, too, is Krampus. So,
Not to be confused with a very disappointing movie by Michael.
Oh, let's not bring up that movie, shall we?
I was so looking forward to that.
That Krampus in that movie was just like a Muppet.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't even have a moving jaw. It's just like I'm like, dude, how many? Just bring up Krampus on an image search, and you got all these incredible stuff. And then he's just like, yeah, we'll just stick a desiccated mummy-looking thing in a Santa suit. I'm like, no. What? You made Trick or Treat. Why are you making this like this?
It was pretty bad.
Even the poster gave away.
Even as a Krampus was not that good. I mean,
when they finally got around to him, yeah. I'm like, have you ever seen Rare Exports?
No.
It is a Scandinavian comedy horror film about that Santa was more of a Krampus creature, and that he had been somehow sealed up in a tomb for years and years and years, and an archaeologist company goes in and brings him out, and he's encased in ice. And there are these they were referred to as Santa's helpers, but these odd little bearded men that were like his minions, and they were trying to help not only rescue the Krampus Santa Claus, but they were kidnapping children in the town so that he could punish them when he was released from this ice flow.
We're adding our guest.
Yay!
How are you?
Woohoo!
And we have Lillee with us.
Yes, we do. The COVID caverned Lillee, yes.
Oh, no.
Well, before you start talking, we're going to have Jeff introduce you.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Get up here, back up here. So our guest tonight is Lillee Allee, student of religion, spirituality, and paranormal investigation for over 40 years. She's the widow of internationally known dark magician John D. Allee. Lillee continues to consult in paranormal investigations, and her specialties include, but are not limited to, Marian and cultural, spiritual phenomena and apparitions, and spiritual support to teams and clients who want spiritually counseling after investigations. I'm sure the Destination Fear team certainly needs that. She also works with EVP work and old school audio, the accuracy and research of past life regeneration, and seance and spiritual protection. She was also one of the first to incorporate training canines into paranormal investigations. And she hosts a radio program here on PowerX Network, Happy Medium, with Deborah Ann Freeman. And she co-authored the book.
Now. It's now called Aeon Now with Davron and Christine Motza. We switched it around recently.
There you go.
Allowed us to be a lot more general in what we were talking about. Because after, what was it, like 5 years, there's just so much you can talk about with mediums. And there was so much else going on in the world that we wanted to go to that route.
There you go. So welcome, Lillee Allee.
Thank you.
Oh, you forgot one thing. She knows more about Krampus than most people on the planet.
I was raised with Krampus.
So are you his helper?
As like a nanny or something?
Yeah, he was my nanny. You didn't know? That's why I'm the way I am. Yeah, that makes total
Barbara and I were just before you came on. She and I were commiserating of how bad Michael Dougherty's movie was.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Bad is relative. Okay, and I don't like to slam anybody's artwork, but that wasn't as much to my liking, though I've continued to research that, and I found that a lot of it is nice. I mean, when I was a kid, nobody knew about Krampus, okay? And the original way to say it is Krampen, which means claw. Germans are very, very literal. Do you know what I mean? Claw.
Yeah.
So claw would come by, and it fascinates me because you have to wonder if it was even at one point Santa Krampen versus Santa Claus, but that's all lost to history in a lot of ways. However, Krampus is really a neat character. How I was raised with him was that tonight, okay, would be Krampusnacht, okay? And that's the night where you get your comeuppance, all right? And in the way my family, Americanized, celebrated was this night, Krampus comes, okay? And if I'm alive the next morning and in my bed, that's a good sign. You go downstairs to your breakfast, and in your plate is either a gift or coal, or worse yet, nothing. Okay? Coal being not a good sign, you better really get your act together before Christmas Eve. A present meaning you've been a good kid, and the cost and fun of the present is even more stating not only about your parents' wealthiness, but also, you know, that you were a better kid. And nothing means he's still watching you, which is even more horrifying if you think about it.
Yeah, that's kind of, paranoid, but yeah.
Now, my cousin used to get, are you ready for this? Every year she would get and she's about 20 years older than I am, and she would get a orange and nuts. So that's how they did it in the Depression. But poor Krampus, I mean, he's getting his just desserts now, but you have to remember the belief was considered fascist at one point. The whole idea of it has continually been come under fire, and really it's a tradition, if you will, where we as children, okay, and there's nothing more serious about being a German child, I can just tell you. We as children were told how we add up, okay? And it was a great way to get us to do more cleaning for the holidays, okay? More assistance in baking. I mean, the parents had the right idea here. But, you know,
Sure.
People are against Krampus. I don't know why, but, you know, I think it's a lot of fun.
Well, let me ask you, Lillee, then this new phase or fad of Elf on a Shelf, because it seems to me that's just as or worse psychologically than Krampus ever could be.
Well, Elf on the Shelf isn't going to tie you up and whip you with sticks and drown you in the river.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on the memes.
Elf on a Shelf is a watered-down Krampus. Yes, absolutely. No question there. And yeah, it's a little creepy. But many of us who are brought up in the Catholic tradition also had the Virgin Mary in the house. And so she was always watching too.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? So depending on how the child was raised, I don't think it's going to be as frightening. But I do know some parents that did not get the results, shall we say, they wanted because the kids were constantly hiding the elf on the shelf because it creeped them out.
Well, I know back in the 50s when I was growing up, I'd never heard of Krampus, and I didn't actually get into it or hear about it until I started doing this radio show, getting into the paranormal.
It's gotten more popular in the 2000s. It started getting popular in the 1990s. And a lot of this is sort of our taking back of our traditions, though I was told never to discuss it because with so many things, when you're German growing up, especially right after World War II, people weren't asking about German cookies or, you know what I mean? You got Italian cookies, right? So my mother's side of the family, they took over and, I could talk about all the Italian cookies we had, but the German stuff like lefse, which comes from Norway and things like that were always Christmas treats, not so much. And again, it was the sign of the times when I was growing up, but it was also in respect, at least the way my father explained it, for we had a lot of Jewish families and I was very close to them. And he didn't want memories dredged up of, the war in Germany for them. And so this was sort of a family thing.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, and my cousin's family also, they watered it down to the point where it was a gift from St. Nicholas. Now, if you can figure out why St. Nicholas would give you a gift on his feast day, okay, it didn't make sense, but then Christmas was sort of odd to me either because it's someone else's birthday and I'm getting, a load of presents. And we're always raised, at least I think, we always look at the other side. I loved the fact my Jewish friends got a different present every night because I could appreciate them. If you came from a decently well-to-do family, you had a pile of presents and you really couldn't appreciate any of them.
Right.
And people look at me very differently when I say to them, don't go all out. What would really benefit the child through the year, and based on your income, that may be socks. I mean, we're going to do a thing on New Aeon Now. We're doing a comedy show the week before Christmas. And one of the things we're doing is how presents may have changed due to COVID. And it's sort of funny, but it's not, but it's the way of the world. I mean, I know people who would kill for a roll of toilet paper right now in my area. So instead of the orange, you might want the, toilet paper in the sock. But that's not a lot of fun. But a cool mask would be a lot of fun. And so I think we have to change, if you will, with the times. And I think it's now nice to have diversity. But the story of Krampus, unfortunately, paints that stereotypical light where, Germans and Austrians, we tend to be very hard on our children, right? And so, and what did I used to get called in Salem? The Ice Queen. Because, you do it or you don't. And that's how I was raised. So I can see where people would be frightened by Krampus, but if approached in a family situation, you're much happier. And if you understand Krampus Loft, which is the run, then you'll understand it's the same thing. Well, not really, but it's similar to the day after Thanksgiving, though they didn't do it here this year with COVID, but usually Santa goes around on our wonderful volunteer firemen with the truck.
Right.
And they
that's most
and
towns.
you get to see Santa going around, right? And so he's reminding you that he's watching out on you and it's Christmas time is here. Well, Krampus is sort of a rougher version of that. I mean, the Krampus Loft. No, Dewey, Krampus is not at the door. Stop it.
Otherwise.
When you've got Krampus looking in on you, if you will, it's going to be a little more frightening. But if you were raised with it, the Krampus Loft is hysterical. And in a village, you knew all the guys who were dressing up as Krampus, and they were scaring you, and you were loving it. It's like a haunted house, if you will.
That's very true, because I was watching the YouTube videos of the Krampus runs, and the kids were laughing. They were getting picked up by Krampus, and they were loving it. They were laughing and talking to the guy, and it was rather fun.
And again, if it's done in that kind of situation, I think it's wonderful. On the other hand, just some unknown gang running through the street in a Krampus outfit, okay, is terrifying. But remember, in those villages, these are the people who they know. It's usually don't laugh. The police officers, the firefighters, the plumber. Do you know what I mean? And they have fun with this. And they scare the kids, but the kids know who it is. It's Uncle Joe over there, the white Krampus. And it's okay. But, remember, this has lasted almost 2,000 years that we know of. So I don't want people to think, I've had to argue this with a few people, in different chat rooms and everything. Well, it's a modern. No, it's not. Okay, it's not. And, well, it's evil. No, it's not. Okay, it's there to have fun. Now, what often would happen, and don't laugh, traditionally, the night of the Krampus run, okay, after the Krampus run, the guys went home, got gussied up, the mothers went home, and then there was a Krampus ball on Krampusnacht, okay? So tonight there would have been a ball. Well, now think of this logically. Are the kids going to misbehave when mom and dad are at the ball when they've just been told Krampus is coming? No. So they were able to have a nice night out. The oldest kids would babysit the rest of the kids, and it makes sense. Okay, do I think the kids acted up anyway? Of course they did. But it's sort of fun if you look at it that way.
Now, you mentioned that he is 2,000 years old.
Yes.
So I am assuming that if this goes back to the old gods and traditions.
Yes, there's no question, okay, that the way he looks, and the traditional Krampus is black or dark brown, but we've seen some great white Krampuses, okay? So he doesn't have to be as hideous, though it seems like the guys lately are really having more fun making him more crampy as we go along. There's always going to be giant horns on a Krampus, and that's because, depending on who you talk to, he's a half goat, and we know where that comes from, paganism.
Sure.
And as Christianity got involved, he's half demon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you ring the cowbells and you have a good time. They run through the streets, the kids are giggling, the adults are giggling, and you can poke the Krampies with sticks, they can poke you with sticks, and you realize just how naughty you were this year. And there's nothing worse if you think about it. Again, if you're in a small village and it's not, just for TV, that, Uncle Klaus is walking by and saying to you, yep, you were the one who stole the $5 out of my wallet. Okay, now, is it really Uncle Klaus? It looks like him. It sounds like him. But how did he figure that one out? And he waited till the night? Oh, goodness, I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the story can be as hideous as you want it to be. The poem Little Orphan Annie has a reference to this, European tradition where, the bad kid, he was taken up by demons and never seen again. Often the Krampus will come in the house and allegedly take the child after beating him with sticks, wrapping him up in chains, and then going and throwing him in the river. I never heard that story as a child. It was just if you're good or bad, okay? But if you read all the old text and you even look at old Christmas cards for turn of the century,
Mm-hmm.
he's pretty scary.
Yeah.
It's at least...
the baskets and the whips and the kids screaming and all of that, yeah.
Think about it. Whips and chains. Not exactly your children's, love of things.
But when we stop to think about it, Lillee, when we tear apart old fairy tales,
Mm-hmm.
Not how they've been modernized, but the original versions, those were pretty darn scary.
especially the German ones, they're dark.
Yeah.
Very, very dark. Okay? And a lot of them were to, shall we say, deliver moralistic stories. I mean, don't run out at night. We've all heard our parents say that, right? But if you heard a horrible story about two kids that were supposed to go see their grandmother, then they didn't, and the next thing you know, they're cooking in an oven, that adds a little bit to the story of I probably shouldn't go out at night.
Right. Right.
No, it's very true. I mean, when you start to really tear apart fairy tales, some of them were just horrendous.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at... Yeah, go ahead.
Read the original Wolf story, okay? It's so dark, it's almost, our movie dark. Okay? It's pretty dark. And there's different, depending on the area, there's different traditions around the wolf, okay? Sometimes the grandmother is the wolf. Sometimes the wolf comes along and is plotting with the grandmother. Sometimes they don't make it to the grandmother, and the wolf gets them on. It's fascinating. And I've read feminists even writing about the fact that the wolf is very reminiscent of that bad guy that's following you. And that's why you shouldn't be going on the path at night. And it all works for me because, yeah, it's tales of morality and warning, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Well, the take in the movie Company of Wolves took the Red Riding Hood story in a more, like you say, almost sexual awakening kind of concept.
I loved that movie, by the way, but I'm weird.
Oh, I love those are my kind of movies.
Now, with St. Nick, remember, he would drop off candy. See, one of the big stories on this is St. Nick tonight. Now, think about it. Why would St. Nick be out on the eve of his feast day, okay? But Krampus...
Working up an appetite.
Right. Krampus and St. Nicholas are hanging around together tonight. They're visiting the houses. St. Nick drops off candy in the shoes of the good kids, and Krampus will deliver birch twigs or coal. And the one show, I can't remember, I think it's called Grimm, they had the best Krampus where he'd say, "You've been naughty." And it was just classic. And that's what the problem was. So remember, if a misbehaved kid can be beaten, can disappear, stuffed, and die in Krampus's sack, or hauled off to his lair to continue to be tortured or eaten and kept in a cage or taken to be drowned. It's not, you just want to be careful with that. And you have to wonder, this is the dark side of Christmas in so many ways, okay? And there's always been, it's the dark half of the year. So there's always going to be, before we had Netflix, thousands of years ago, okay, before toilets were invented, we had, stories. We've seen this in the Celtic belief, where many stories were passed down, and to be a good storyteller really upped, your status in the community. So think about it. The story is what we've got here. And the story is preparing you in later years for the joyous Christmas. But in order to enjoy the joyous Christmas, you have to be prepared spiritually, and so you better be a darn good kid.
So this really does follow the Catholicism follows it very closely in that you're sort of going through the dark side, the purgatory, in order to get to the paradise, right?
I see it as that. However, the tradition says that Krampus is the son of the Norse goddess of the underworld, Hel. Okay, H-E-L, for those who are wanting to write it down. I don't know why you would, but I'm just saying one L. Now, during the 12th century, the Catholic Church got angry at Krampus, okay, because they felt there was a real resemblance to the devil, which there was, okay?
Well, they're devil anyway.
Right, and so that was a problem. Then in 1934, Austria's Conservative Christian Social Party tried to totally eradicate the folk practices regarding Krampus. But as you can imagine, it was just put underground. And then you would find, I have an ornament, and I have no idea where my father put it, so I continue to look for it through the Christmas stuff. But I have an ornament of Krampus, the bad Santa, that's probably over 150 years old. And those are the things, they did get that right in the Krampus movie, by the way, because many of us had ornaments on the tree, okay? But, it's frightening. Refugees who have moved recently to alpine towns, they've stated their concern, and some towns consider taming the horror, but this is very, very normal for them. And whereas the costumes are frightening, again, by looking at it and educating, they will realize that really Krampus is a lot of fun. It's not a scary thing. Okay? But you can see cultural traditions of which you have no point or reference, it can be very scary. And that's not part of something that we really want to do with kids.
Well, I mean, we were talking before about the movie Krampus, but that kind of had like a Krampus who looked sort of like a Muppet. And to me, it was kind of dumbing down the whole Krampus tradition by kind of making it mellower to a certain degree. And trying to scare people at the same time, which really didn't work.
No, I agree with you. Part of that problem is what like I say, there's some beautiful scenes in that. To me, the most frightening scene was the last scene. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's never seen it. But it's a modern take on Krampus. And you got to remember, it was the first one, though the William Shatner Christmas Horror Story is so much better in terms of a horror movie and a Krampus aspect. Mm-hmm. But, it was based on a legend that has never really found its way on the big screen. And it's also fun. It's also well done. Some people will say it's family friendly. I don't know about that, okay? If you really didn't know who Krampus was, I don't know how you'd benefit from the movie, especially the grandmother, who I was particularly touched with. But, going through. Now, one thing that there is about the movie is that Max, who's one of your child there, imagined the events, okay? And so that's the first version of this, if you will. You follow that? Where it was all just a dream?
Sure.
Think of it like St. Elsewhere's final.
Sure.
That, I get that. But then there's this other twist that somehow, because they've been naughty, Krampus isn't going to let them go. And the whole idea of Krampus was, unless you were a hideous, hideous person who was out to kill people in your later parts of your life, you were more to be scared. And I don't feel that there was a lot of stuff in there that I thought was a little mean-spirited. And that's what bothered me.
Very true. It also, when we look at Santa Claus, for example, the modern day Coca-Cola Santa Claus versus the Saint Nick that was more traditional, were completely different looking individuals and completely different persona, in my opinion.
Yes. Now, if you look at the Coca-Cola Santa, which now, I mean, for me, that's my Santa, right? That's what I was brought up with in the 60s.
Sure.
But the Coca-Cola Santa actually was a mistake of ad executives, because when they translated some descriptions of Santa Claus, they saw him as a portly man. And if I remember correctly, the word was not portly, but a man who could transport himself, be able, like for us, we might say, not, coordinated, because remember, he had to jump down the chimneys. And yet they saw it as this fat, jolly man. And it was really Coca-Cola that changed our life in terms of what Santa looks like. But if you want to know something very dark, Coca-Cola also changed our lives with the Charlie Brown special, which was originally intended, you ready, to be one of the first infomercials with Charlie Brown and them all drinking Coke. That didn't go over well, and so then we got the show that we're used to now.
I don't mean to jump back a little bit, but I think you mentioned a second title that you said it really quick and you didn't want to spoil it, called Blastine. What did it say?
Blastine? No, you mean the Christmas Horror Story?
Maybe, but were you making a reference to it with the word? It sounded like Blastine, but you went right by it.
I don't remember saying that, so that's sort of bizarre.
Just before you said Christmas Horror Story, you said something that sounded like Blastine, but you didn't want to give away any spoilers, and then you mentioned William Shatner.
Well, that sort of does fit the Christmas Horror Story. I don't think I said it that way, but I could have, because I thought the Christmas Horror Story, I was so excited, right? Because I heard about it and William Shatner was in it, and I was so excited. And if you know the history behind that, that was Canadians' Krampus. And so obviously we got our Krampus, and we didn't get the Christmas Horror Story in the theaters. We got it later on. So my neighbor next door, I love her kids, and so I rented Christmas Horror Story. Now, I thought, how bad could it be? They had seen Krampus in the movie theater, right? How bad can this be, I said. Okay, so after watching it with them, two wailing children, I realized that it probably wasn't the best idea. I can't tell you enough that, well, they say it's okay for children. It's not. It's really a teen movie. Very interesting, lots of fun, and I love William Shatner. But even I was rattled by the twist at the end that was so dark, it wasn't even funny.
Wow.
It's almost like a dark comedy, like a la Heathers for Christmas.
Now I have to find it and watch it.
You gotta see it. You gotta see it.
I mean, it's on Amazon for like, $14, but, so.
No, you'll find it on one of them. They always put it on for Christmas right around there for free, because I always watch it every year. I love the movie, okay? Love it. There's so many little Easter eggs and so many neat things in there, but it's not for children. I learned that the hard way. The other movie that is for children that people don't often think of for Christmas, but because of Dewey, I always have it on, is Gremlins. And Gremlins is a great Christmas story.
Oh,
and
totally.
It's a much, there's a lot to talk about with kids after Gremlins. And if they don't want to focus on the sadness and the dark side of this thing, you've got the Gremlins to talk about. But that's a fun movie for Christmas too. For the COVID Christmas, get Christmas Horror Story, get Krampus, and of course, stream Gremlins. So much fun.
Well, yeah, that's one of the best Christmas stories.
Well, we forget that Christmas used to have that dark side, and ghost stories weren't told at Halloween. They were told at Christmas time.
Exactly, because it was the dark half of the year. And like I said, I think I interrupted myself on this, but before there was streaming, we did storytelling, okay? And so you'd be sitting around the fire, remember, no TV, no, CDs to play, and there you are. And, we now have the Yule log even to watch. Well, back then, you either had your own Yule log or you didn't watch that either. And so that's when the stories. And a lot of scrying went on Christmas, especially for young women who hadn't yet found their their man, and men who hadn't found their ladies. And, of course, we can help them with that. That'll entertain them for at least an hour.
Now, the article...
And some people forgot the reason, and maybe you can discuss it too, that reason why Santa comes down the chimney was because that was the portal for spirits to enter a house.
Yes, excellent point, yes. And the whole idea of the chimney is sort of I've read many articles, scholarly and just blogs, on what everyone sees as the chimney, where Santa is almost like Krampus, if you will, and then he's reborn down the chimney to, the song, "There is something in the chimney and I don't know what it's been." Remember that one?
No.
No.
Oh my God. Bob, I love to play that on the radio because it's so gross. But it's just a sweet little song. And what happened was, it's the sweet little girl singing it. And what happened was, Santa got stuck in the chimney. And, first it's making an awful smell. And then, it's been there for a year.
Okay.
And then at the last part of the song, there's something in the chimney and Santa can't come down. But Daddy says he's been with us all year.
Oh.
It's adorable. The Bob, I want to say Weathers group, but I can look that up and send
It's Bob Rivers.
Thank you. He is awesome. That is one of the funniest and well done. When you're just sick of the traditional Christmas carols, that is just, you just will lose it. The restroom door said gentleman is another one that you won't survive. It's just hysterical.
But so Krampus would come down the chimney as well? I mean, which was chimneys the portal into a home for everybody?
I didn't have a chimney growing up, so
Okay.
Krampus could come different ways. Now, one night, my mother said she wouldn't let him go up on the roof. He wanted to go up and make reindeer noises on the roof. And we have a pretty big house, okay? So my father was throwing rocks up. You can imagine my mother's not so much joy with that. Onto the roof at paces so it did sound like. And that kept me going for another 2 years, that there obviously is something to this. I was asleep, and I knew that Krampus was supposed to be coming, but I didn't know who was there. And the next thing you know, I hear rocks which didn't sound like rocks to me. They were reindeer hoofs. And so I stayed in my bedroom petrified, and the next thing you know, I had a present in the morning. But Krampus could come at any time. Krampus could come up behind you, okay, if you weren't doing your chores. Remember, these are villages, lots of agrarian and herds, and if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, there's a big stick behind you, and you'll get whacked when you least likely expect it.
Now, I know the article that I was reading, it said Krampus is the devilish companion of St. Nicholas. So
They like to use that word Krampus and devil together a lot. He's not a devil if you really think about it. And it's hard to explain this to people who this is a new idea to. He looks like a devil, but if you were going to go and harass a child because they're bad and they're going to end up in the wrong direction as adults, you wouldn't dress up like the Easter Bunny to tell them this. So that's why Krampus has that scary look. And, it's, I just don't see him as the devil because, this is someone who's working with St. Nicholas. Therefore, he really couldn't be the devil unless St. Nicholas wasn't a saint, if you follow me on that.
Right.
It's like they went out together and they both had the list, and you get the naughty and you get the nice, and off they went.
Coworkers.
Which is why you hear, were you naughty or nice? I think that phrase also comes from the Europeans and the Krampus stories, because it was all about naughty or nice. So, I just don't feel, I get because when people start comparing Krampus to the devil, they're saying that something he's doing is evil. And to me, evil would be this horrible monster that comes in, and whether you've been naughty or nice, he terrorizes you, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, this is an alleged terrorizing of the worst kids. Remember, you could get nothing, or you could get coal, or you just wouldn't be there anymore.
That's right. You get coal in your stocking.
Yep. Yep. A lot of people put stockings up for St. Nicholas Day.
Yeah.
And
You know, I always equated Krampus more with Pan.
Exactly. I would say Krampus is a twist of Pan. He's certainly man's animal nature, okay? And I think that Krampus is the one who's the very strict parent, if you will, whereas St. Nicholas always sees the best in the little monsters, right? Because you can go to Santa and tell him that, you know, you want to be better, and then you might get better gifts. I mean, it's really, psychologically, there's a whole nother phase of this, but it's really not a bad thing, okay? And remember, it's for someone who is not respecting the spirit of the season. What is the spirit of Christmas? Okay, or Yule? Community, right? Being together, celebrating family. And this has gone through thousands of years. This is not, you know, yesterday. Now, it's not COVID Christmas, so we have Krampus. He's been there trying to keep the family together, if you will, and trying to keep the kids in check.
So, I mean, when we look at the whole Christmas holiday with Krampus included in it,
Yep.
It's almost a lesson for kids in karma.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're not threatened. Okay, if Krampus gave you coal, you know what you did. All right? Yeah, I mean, you know, kids are excellent at, you know, well, it was not my fault. Yeah, I ate all the cookies, and then we didn't have any cookies for Thanksgiving. But, you know, it wasn't my fault. So that may be a situation where there's coal and everybody else might get cookies on St. Nicholas Day. And he'll see that, okay, and realize that everybody knows it was your fault. And, you know, it's a cautionary tale. And really, Krampus is there for respect, appreciation, and the holiday traditions and values, and even further, the community tradition and values.
True, because I don't understand the Krampus run bit, but my guess is that it was simply a social gathering where it could be a community celebration.
Yes, and keep in mind again, they all dress up. It's something fun for the men to do, okay? They all outdo each other with their outfits. Sometimes outfits and skins are handed down from generation to generation. And so after, you know, 3 years, from 7 to 10, you know that's Uncle James in that, you know, white outfit over there. Okay, but it's still the scary thing, the cowbells going off, and it's a sight and sound in terms of the senses. It's cold, there's sight, there's sound, and you're with your family. It's not like they put all the kids in a room and left a Krampus in there and turned off the lights. You're with your family, and it's a family-oriented event, much like I would say if you just reversed roles, like a Halloween costume contest. Sometimes today they'll have the best Krampus contest, okay? And again, it's a great excuse for the guys to be out there having fun, doing a little drinking. And this was part of the traditions. I think we all can understand in the 30s and 40s, 50s, and maybe even the 60s, this would not have been taken well in the United States. And there's a lot of reasons for that.
Right. Well, now, it's like Santa Claus, I guess, you know, it's like you better be good because he knows if you've been bad or good. But they're mainly talking to the children.
Right.
Is Krampus more for the kids to shape up?
Absolutely. It's for the kids to shape up.
Okay.
I'm sure you could really scare your wife or husband by putting some birch twigs by the bed and then say, "Oh,
kinky.
Wow, Do you have something to tell me? But really, it's for the children. And it's, if you know kids who've been brought up with this, they laugh and giggle and they like Krampus. To them, it is the elf on the shelf. Do they believe that Krampus is there? But again, this naughty or nice thing, it doesn't make sense with Santa because Santa looks at the best of everyone, right?
Right.
And so the naughty was taken care of by Krampus. Now, just to give you another thing, because it's COVID Christmas, as I'm calling it, okay, if you really want to get into movies, check out Mother Krampus. I know, it's not the best movie I've ever found, but it's based on the myth of Frau Perchta, a witch that comes on the 12 days of Christmas and she abducts a child every night. So there's different takes on this. You can hear about Black Peter depending on the different cultural traditions in the area. But there's certain, all through that area, okay, in the Western European area and in Eastern Europe too, in some places, there are these, shall we say, antagonists to the all good Klaus.
So are they still doing this a lot in Europe?
It's growing, but as a tourist thing. Okay. So, you and I would probably love, if it wasn't COVID, to go to Austria and see. Many of the places have international now visitors to watch the Krampus Loft. Okay. And I'm for that and I'm against that only because, remember, these are community events. Okay. And sure, it's a great way to get tourism, except with COVID. But, you really couldn't have the long tongue and everything coming over at you.
No.
For safety with COVID.
Right.
But, yeah, it's there, okay? And it's now here. I've heard of Krampus runs and Krampus parties in New York, Massachusetts, Florida, California. I think there was one in Texas. And I think there's one in Minnesota now.
The Krampus ball.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, the whole idea, if you ever saw, the one thing that reminded me of a Krampus ball, if you will, if you've ever seen Rammstein's, oh my goodness, what is Du riechst so gut? You smell so good? On their video, they have one of those balls. And it's really cool, the way they put it into the story of a werewolf.
Ooh, I have to look at that one.
Oh, it's awesome.
So
you want the original, not the other one.
Okay.
So is Krampus still popularized in Europe?
Yes.
As far as the kids?
Now. Yes.
Yeah.
There are more Krampus books than there ever have been. Remember, before the wars, it was popular. You would get Christmas cards with Krampus on them. Okay, the wars happened, and, this was pretty well put under the cover. And now it's coming out more. I think we are becoming less of a society of fear in terms of, you couldn't have witchcraft circles the way they do in Salem
Right.
40 years ago, right?
Right.
But I always worry that they hoodwink Krampus into something that he's not. He is what he is. He's not out to steal children. And one of my friends said, "Is that the German way to get rid of a bad kid?"
Keep the receipt.
I tried to explain that really wasn't the story. I mean, if I were writing a book about Krampus, I've always wanted to write, don't steal my idea, people, but you can if you really want to, is that the parent takes the bad kid out, right? Wraps him in the chains, throws him in the river because he's just a very bad kid. And then the mystery, did Krampus do it? And, developing the characters so some of them are believing it. Do you know what I mean? That it must have been Krampus because this kid was a terrible kid. And looking at things in terms of a commentary on life as to, is a really bad kid at like 12 when hormones are racing, does that really predict a horrible, horrible child who's going to kill people? And so that's what I've always thought with Krampus. You don't make it, I think, if anything with Krampus, it's the fun of his tongue and the horns. And he's just, I'll tell you someone who I bet you don't think was based on Krampus. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gene Simmons.
No, Gene Simmons might be Krampus in real life. Just saying, he's got the tongue.
Yeah.
But no,
Fact.
what very popular holiday story, okay, that again, I would have been brought up with, I think every kid would have been brought up with from the 60s on, is really about Krampus. Any guesses?
Grinch? The
Yes,
Grinch.
very good.
Yay.
What?
Dr.
Grinch.
Seuss was a German.
Oh, the Grinch. Ah.
Yep. And remember, what was he really trying to do?
Stop Christmas.
Was he?
With the noise.
Well, no, he
Well,
was.
the noise.
I think he was trying. He was trying to get revenge on people that slighted him. But
Well, you're thinking of the feature film, not the original.
not the
Dr.
original.
Seuss.
Zeus.
Yeah.
No, in the original. Think about it.
Yeah.
He did love Cindy Lou Who because she
Yeah,
had
he
the
did.
magic of Christmas,
Hmm.
right? And then he was able to see the magic of Christmas with everyone.
See, redemption sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. And why did he go and steal all their stuff? Remember the dog? The dog is the best part of that whole show.
And
I
Smack,
still
smack.
think
Sorry,
it's
yes.
the best. Okay. And he takes all their stuff. Why? Because is it because that they're not appreciating it or they're taking it for granted and he has nothing?
I think it was more that it really came down to the fact he didn't like their singing and just really annoyed by the noise.
Or so he says.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that has been documented that Grinch is based on Krampus.
That makes
And
total sense.
that makes sense. And if you think about it with Dr. Seuss wrote very some dark stuff too. There's one poem he wrote about being in the dark with a monster. It was a riot. And I used to love that page in my book. In fact, I tore it out and put it on my wall to my mother's fear. But it was a little, this is Clark. We found him in the dark, in the park. And it's this monster in a cage. It's adorable. But the thing about this is, I don't think in the 60s we were ready to have Krampus beating Cindy Lou Who with a stick. Okay?
Right.
So, but we were ready to understand the meaning of Christmas. And that poor Charlie Brown Coca-Cola tale, if you really, I cry every time I watch that one because it's so emotional for me when Charlie Brown picks the most pathetic tree. Because that's how I was. I always wanted like the broken reindeer. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
Okay.
the broke because nobody else would take it, and it deserved a home too.
Hmm.
But I don't know if that's being an only child or what the deal is. But I felt sorry for those that might be alone at Christmas, so I would always pick the crappy tree, and my father would yell at me.
So that's
but-
like the island with the misfit toys.
I loved the island with the misfit toys. Okay,
I
and
still want to know what was wrong with the doll.
wasn't
I've
it
never
something
understood. The
about
little
she
dolly seemed perfectly fine.
Right, but she didn't cry. She wasn't happy. She cried or something. I'd have to see it again, but there was something wrong with her too.
Yeah.
Whether she didn't
Yeah.
cry at the right time. But yeah, I loved Misfit Toys. And that talks a lot about, again, a cautionary tale, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the Bumble, I mean, talk about adorable.
Oh yeah.
The Abominable Snowman, yeah.
But see, I look at Wizard of Oz as one of the greatest tales of all time.
It's my favorite movie of the whole world, and I love the books.
Which
and
one?
he comes from my hometown.
Which,
L. Frank Baum? Oh, okay.
Yes. We also have, that's Pugsley choking to death. He gets all excited about drinking his water. He's the pug. And then he's choking to death after he drinks it too fast. But we have a house here in Fayetteville that's now the Gage House. And that's where he lived for a while. But he was originally from Chittenango. Here's some trivia for you. And in Chittenango, in the sidewalk, we have a yellow brick road.
Oh,
wow.
So, they have, I don't know if it's still open because of COVID, but we used to have a beautiful Wizard of Oz museum with all the original books and everything else. And it's
Wow.
really, for someone like me, it's really fun. Now, just to let you know this, my cousin had to go to see a therapist because she was so afraid of the Wicked Witch.
Oh.
And I was so thrilled with the
Wow.
Wicked Witch that now I have my flying monkeys, which are my little gremlins.
Oh,
But,
Yeah.
you know, everybody takes it differently.
wow.
Well, Margaret Hamilton and I became friends the last few years of her life. She only lived in New York City, and she was very sweet, and she was really tiny. But it was really cool that she and I were both correspondents, and when we saw each other, she called me a friend in front to one of her friends. She referred to me as a friend of hers.
Well, I am honored to be talking to you because I think without her, okay, that would not have been a good movie. Everybody looks at, you know, the three, and I mean, to me, her and the Cowardly Lion, as you know,
Mhm.
that was switched around
Burt
at the
Lahr.
last minute too. Burt Lahr, yeah. But
Well, Burt
now-
Lahr was cast as the lion. Scarecrow, Ray Bolger was originally going to be cast as a Tin Man, and he fought it, and he pointed out that when he got his contract with MGM, he wanted to play the Scarecrow so much he had that as a clause in his contract. If they ever made The Wizard of Oz, he would play the Scarecrow.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and then of course we almost lost Matlock because he was nearly killed with the Tin Man makeup.
Yep.
And replaced by Jack Haley, and they didn't bother to tell him. By the way, you know, you're replacing someone who almost died at our hands.
Yeah, is that friendly fire, I wonder?
Well, Margaret's injury was the second take. The take we see in the movie was the first take of the fireball.
Did she get hurt by it?
Oh, she was horribly injured. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
when she went down the second time they did the second take, something it went off like a fraction of a second too soon, and it caught fire at the end of her broom and the brim of her hat. And she was very and of course the makeup was copper based.
Of course.
So it was like insanely painful just to remove that. And she was on bed rest for a time. And one of the studio heads called to say, you know, ask how she was. Unfortunately, either her agent or manager or somebody that she knew grabbed the phone and just reamed the guy saying, you know, you're lucky she doesn't sue you into a billion pieces, because she later thought, you know, it's possible it could have been recording it and you say, how are you? And you automatically say, well, I'm fine or something to avoid a lawsuit.
Yep.
But yeah, fortunately she had someone to belay that.
Wow.
Well, you know, I think we don't appreciate what happened with Michael Jackson after his little fireball incident.
Oh yeah.
You know, the pain involved. Can you imagine? Awful.
Wow.
But I still want
Yeah.
a flying monkey.
You want to
Oh,
fly
I know.
a
I love
monkey,
the. I have countless photos that I save that I repost, where they say, you know, flying monkeys, you know, scaring the daylights out of people since 1939.
Yes.
All
That
right.
to me is one of the most wonderful powers, but I don't know. I just think, you know, if we don't have magic in our lives, and I'm not talking about being a witch or a mage or a shaman, I'm talking about the simple magic that is life and the rituals and traditions that we hold dear. There is something magical about Krampus night. There is something magical about Christmas Eve. And, you know, even when you take the religion out of it, it can still be so emotional and spiritual.
Mm.
Okay? And even if you choose to celebrate Yule, it can still be so emotional and spiritual. And I think that's where a lot of this magic and the supernatural gets into these holidays.
We're going to go ahead and take us a quick break. And just to let you know, Lillee, that your mic will be live, so don't say anything. You will not hear any of the commercials. And you'll hear me when I come back on the air. And then you'll know that we're back on. So,
You got it.
So with that, Jeff, you want to take us out?
Yeah, you're listening to the Paranormal View with your hosts, Henry Foister, Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's wonderful guest, Lillee Allee, talking about Krampus. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from all kinds of other places. Tonight we got with us Barbara Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And speaking of listeners from everywhere, Barbara, where do we have listeners at tonight?
Oh, they're coming in from all sorts of places tonight. We have the United States, the United Kingdom, Scotland, which is part of the United Kingdom, sorry, Canada, Puerto Rico, and Norway.
Oh, wow. We got all kinds of listeners tonight then.
Oh, yeah.
They're probably shaking in their boots hearing about Krampus. So we have with us our great guest, Lillee Allee.
I am here.
Yeah, I knew she'd be back.
Now that Skype is finally behaving, yes.
What was
Oh,
it?
welcome to
Was
my
you having
world.
problems?
It did earlier. That's why I was late. But
Oh.
I wanted to just give you some facts on Krampus, something that I thought was really important. Peter Jelovich, which is a professor of history at Johns Hopkins, he was quoted in the National Geographic as pointing out that, he believes that it may be the horn god of the pagans, a pre-Christian Alpine tradition, which would bring about Faunus, okay, and would bring about Pan. But by the 17th century, Krampus was paired up with St. Nicholas, so they were the dynamic duo. And the reason why the German immigrants kept it such a quiet celebration between families was the fact that many people did and would confuse Krampus with the Christian devil because of the hair, horns, hooves, and fangs. Now, it was also forbidden by the Catholic Church, as I talked about earlier, by fascists in World War II Europe, who believed that Krampus himself was a part of the Social Democrat politics, if you can believe that. And that's why they outlawed Krampus. And Austria tried to ban the beliefs in the 1930s through the 1950s, also for political reasons. But today, he's becoming very popular in the United States. And we have even had last year, I think it was, and well, certainly not this year, I have to keep saying that, but there have even been a Krampus Con happening here in the United States.
There has been, but I don't think that the Krampus is caught on here to actually scare the kids. I think it's more of an adult thing now.
It's more adult time. It's more of adult fun
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have enough gentlemen who want to spend their hard-earned bucks to make Krampus outfits and dance around in the street in the afternoon.
But let's talk about that a little bit, because modernization of Krampus, there was lore going on, or at least some stories, that Krampus also abducted loose women and immoral men.
Yes. And, that was another thing but that wasn't, it sounds good, okay? And again, that's a great story for a teenager who might be going awry and running amok. But, I think that would have been quite the wonderful excuse if you wanted to get rid of your wife. Oh, well, she was pretty bad, and Krampus came. I saw him last night. He was hoofing around, and he took her. I don't know where she went. So I don't want it to be seen as an excuse for foul play, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Krampus is just fun. You now can still get them on postcards, I hate to say it, but Christmas cards, dolls, shirts, and mugs. And I even have heard of, I haven't found it yet, but there's even a stuffed Krampus, which I thought would be way too much fun.
Was that your ringtone? Samantha's notes?
Yes. Yes, that's my ringtone.
That's
Samantha
awesome.
knows.
My ringtone is the TARDIS, but that's
There
kind
you
of-
go. See? That is the way that I am.
Just so you know, Idaho KrampusCon will be back in 2021, it says.
Okay, beautiful. So we can go back to KrampusCon. If, there's so many things out now. They've got comic books. They've got a whole bunch of stuff. There are adorable comics on YouTube, and some of them are really good. And there's even Krampus songs, which I don't believe there was in the beginning, but now you can hear, I love Krampus, I love Krampus, yeah, 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 yeah. It's true.
Well, there's Krampus poems galore.
Yeah. Yes.
And I find that interesting as well. But some of them are obviously very modern. Some of them look like to be a little bit older. But yeah, he seems to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can go to various parts of Europe and find a lot of hidden statuary, which seems to be Krampus related.
There is even a Krampus related, I say it's Krampus, but there's a Krampus related statue on a building in Albany. And it's so obvious to me. But we've never been able to find out for sure if it is Krampus. But we're working on that.
Huh.
Well, it's interesting because if you look at statues of, or facades of the Green Man, for example,
Yep,
he also has that look.
absolutely. So, but the Green Man does not have the long tongue and the twigs.
Yeah.
So that's the only way
He's
you
got
can
his-
tell them
yeah.
apart, to be honest with you. If they have a batch of twigs in their hand, it's probably Krampus or chains. And don't you always wonder in the early English stories where chains were rattling?
Right?
You have to wonder, did that really come from thoughts of somebody dying in a, dungeon in a castle, or was it because Krampus walked around with chains?
Okay. Well, yeah, in the Scrooge story, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Christmas Carol is not, shall we say, it turns out okay, but it's not a happy story.
Not at all.
No.
It's sort of scary.
And it was. And the reason for it was I was bad, and this is my eternity. So don't you do that, or this is the way you'll be.
Yeah, and again, a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And keeping the Christmas season sacred. And you can use that word sacred in any way you want to fit that story, because for some, it was traditionally a time to give to the poor, so they could have a Christmas too. And, especially the English stories are rife with people who were not kind to others, and so they got their comeuppance. Remember that word when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to
Get your comeuppance. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, now, back in the olden days, Krampus was awful big in Europe as far as really with the tales to scare the kids. Is it really big there now also scaring the kids, or is it kind of went mainstream for adults to party on?
I think it's both. I think, the Krampuslauf, again, though it's becoming a big tourism thing, I wish that would stop. It's become a great
Hit the
tourism
set.
thing. Yeah, but I think that is also regarding the misbehaved youth. Okay? And, again, you will see in villages the mayor or whatever may be dressed as Krampus, and if he sees a bad kid, they may get a little swat with the birch sticks. They don't fool around. You've all seen the videos, right? They're pretty scary, but they're fun.
Yeah, some of those are, especially the night runs.
Yes.
Where the illumination of the fire, because they are carrying torches, it's amazing. Just amazing to look at.
And on
we have
the
a
other
couple
side
of
of the year. Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have a couple of questions in the chat, and one is the Krampus minions, because it seems to me I thought I read something about Krampus cats.
There have been various tales of wolves and cats And again, those are add-ons that may be from a particular family or a particular area. But yeah, can you imagine Krampus cats?
Well, you got the Yule cat, which is a Scandinavian cat that attacks you if you didn't get clothes.
Right, and look about the Yule goat.
I don't know the
Yeah,
Yule
I have
goat.
heard
Is
of
that
that
like Black Phillip or?
No, the Yule goat was just a nice thing. They had a Yule goat.
Oh,
Really?
I'll
Yeah.
Look up the Yule goat.
And what about Pete?
Black Pete? Black Pete is a whole nother story.
Uh-oh.
Black Pete is a version of Krampus. Okay, but remember, he's not exactly the same. And I'll give you an example of this, okay? But I think the biggest thing with Black Pete is it's all, again, different areas had different versions. And that's, just the way it goes. Now, let me explain this to you so I can explain it a little better with Black Pete, okay? Black Pete is an interesting story in itself in that it's a different area. And again, depending on the area, you're going to see a different reaction. Just like with Krampus, you're going to see a different side of things. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's going to be a different situation, if you will. So not every Krampus is going to be black. Some areas, they're going to have him brown. A lot of them refer to him as looking like a goat with a big, big tongue. Okay? And, that's a possibility too. But when you think about it, there's a lot of parts of this dark Christmas that have affected people throughout the ages. And I'm going to tell you about down the chimney too. Now, Black Pete is actually, he certainly hasn't taken over in the United States because our society would never allow this. Okay? It would carry a lot of different issues for us. Basically, he's a jovial servant, and he is terrifying, and he's played each year by a Dutch man, are you ready for this, in blackface. Okay? He's bizarrely popular in Holland, and it's really turned into more than these days of a minstrel show. But you can see where I'm offended by it. And that's where our cultural traditions and Holland's aren't going to work together.
Right.
Now, the other one that's similar to Krampus is, of course, the Lord of Misrule. Okay, and this comes from England. Way back, and still done sometimes today, someone would be selected at random to assume the title of the Lord of Misrule. He had to lead the Christmas festivities. Okay? Now, one of the perks was they could get as drunk as they wanted to, perform pranks, do tricks, and command anyone to do anything they like. Of course, it was all fun and games, but more than a few people took it too far and they got beheaded. So that's not as popular as it used to be either.
Yeah. Lose your head over something.
Yeah. Yeah. Just saying it could be much worse. But another thing, you were talking about the portal and chimneys. There are countless European legends that tell about helpful and malicious spirits or entities sneaking into your home through the chimney. Scottish and English stories talk about the brownie, which is that helpful household spirit that helps you, clean, which I've been wanting one for years.
And they're the cobbler kind of elves, right?
Yes. Now, in the Middle Ages, conveniently, witches were also thought to pass into their homes through the chimneys. That's why you didn't see them. Of course, they were going around on these brooms, and then you didn't see them anymore because they snuck down through their chimney. Even in Greece, they had goblins known to crawl into the homes through the chimney, and they terrorized the family. And in 19th century Pennsylvania, Pelsnickel or Belsnickel would slip down your chimney, and he'd give a good child an orange, but punish the naughty ones with a whip. Wow. Gee, where did that come from, do you think? But remember, 19th century, a lot of people who are German often wonder, how did Pennsylvania Dutch turn out to be Pennsylvania Dutch? Well, they created their own culture, if you will, so it's now Pelsnickel or Belsnickel, and you got an orange or you got a whip, your choice.
Wow. Give me the orange.
Yeah, of the two. Oh, and I knew I wanted to say something else that we were talking about because we talked about so much. Now, remember, St. Nick had to go up and down the chimneys and go through every house. Think about that. You're not going to have some fat, sloppy guy being dragged around by these poor little reindeer, okay? But what happened was Washington Irving, who, as many of you know, wrote Sleepy Hollow, he erroneously referred to the old man as portly in his story published in 1809. And then he had a dream that he recounted about Santa flying around in a weightless wagon. These ideas stuck, and this is part of what caused the Coca-Cola Santa.
Yeah. Because it's supposed to be magic that does it for Santa Claus, to where he's able to go down the chimney along with the bag of toys and leave the stuff and then go back out.
Yes.
Without getting any soot on his clothes.
Right. Yeah. But again, I mean, I loved the Santa. I just got to be honest with you. I loved the Santa in Christmas Horror Story. And I just like the fact that he's a tough guy. I think Santa would be, this kindly but tough guy. I mean, if he was a sucker, can you imagine? He'd be sending one load for every kid.
Oh, yeah.
He'd never get his work done.
No.
So, just saying, and if you remember, too, traditionally, Santa brought things that the family otherwise couldn't afford, like oranges and extra nuts. Okay, chestnuts to make stuffing, things like that. We've turned Santa into this mega money-making scheme.
Oh, that's exactly what it is, too.
And we took the Christmas tree from, again, European sources and turned it into something it just shouldn't and couldn't be.
Right.
I'm not for the fake trees, but I remember, you probably remember them, too. Do you remember the metal trees in the 60s?
The little aluminum ones? And you have a little round light, red, blue, and green. It would turn and shine on it. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, how gross is that? That's nothing about, celebrating the beautiful outdoors inside. Now, again, in the German households, we would take cotton, and it took 2 to 3 days, depending on the size of your tree, and a thick layer of cotton on all the different boughs, so it looked like there was snow on it, because it was supposed to look like something that you'd brought in from outside,
right?
Not some metal, post-apocalyptical future Christmas,
right?
So a pink aluminum Christmas tree is probably not a good thing.
I'm sure if you had a reason for one, I think that would be great. But if you're a little bit more of a traditionalist, I sort of like, my Christmas tree the way I have it. Same way I got into a great discussion with a friend who I play song pop with, okay? And he was always raised with Santa being black. Why? He's black, right?
Huh.
He's an African American, and that's what he was brought up with. And he said, I'm wondering, do you have a problem with that? And I said, absolutely not. My Santa may have blue eyes, but that's what my family had, right?
Right.
If you were in China, I would hope that if you wanted to grab our traditions, you would at least make Santa yours.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I don't see anything wrong with that. And so to me, we all have to check our own stuff at the door and say, if we're going to be diverse, allow everyone to have the Santa that works for them.
Right. That's true.
As well it should.
And please, no blackface with the Black Pete. I think that's just, I mean, I get it, that was their, but that's something that, you know, I don't think anyone's going to say that's really diverse and great, and let's start doing that.
Well, do you think that with the situation, COVID and all this introspection and whatever, that people are starting to dig out the old traditions and revisit some of the characters that were involved in more of the ancient traditions?
I would hope so, okay? And one of the things I'd love to see, and this is just me, if you have a fireplace, burn a nice smelling log, you know what I mean? Do your own Yule log if you want to. And do something different this year, only because what I'm hearing from my friends is their kids have made lists of Netflix and Hulu shows that they can all watch. And I keep saying, make it family-oriented and make it fun. Make it something like, for example, even at Christmas, Wizard of Oz does not cause any problems and makes everybody smile. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Sure.
But you have to be careful. On the other hand, to me, I think board games are a great opportunity. When was the last time you saw a family sitting down to a board game? And I think that would be fun. You know, those are the things that, you know, a lot of talking was done when you were playing gin rummy or playing board games. And by the mid-'70s, at least in my family, after Thanksgiving, everybody cleaned up everything quickly so we could go to the mall. And I still don't know what the mall has to do with Puritans and the Mayflower, but whatever, right? But we all did that back then because they were finally open. Okay? And the one thing COVID can maybe teach us is that while it's fun, I mean, nobody can say that going to a mall and hearing the Christmas carols and seeing Santa, I mean, it's magical, right? There we go again.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you think about it, it's also a little bit mercenary, a little bit money affected, because the best gift to me would be something that wouldn't cost a lot but would mean so much.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell a sad story, but an interesting story tied to that, which it was the last Christmas before John died. And we were at the house, and my parents weren't well. So he and I went out to dinner. I still have the pictures very close to my heart. And we got all dressed up and went to a restaurant right around the corner from our house. Okay? Beautiful restaurant, all dialed up. And he said, you know, this is about all I can do tonight. I wanted to go out and get you something, but I couldn't. And I said to him, this could be our last Christmas. To being together is the most awesome thing.
Yeah.
I can hold these memories. I'll lose a locket. I can break a ring. But you can't take that memory away from me.
True. True.
Okay. And how many times have I heard parents say, you know, if I hadn't been working all the time, I would have really enjoyed my kid more when they were 7. Well, that's the one thing you really have to think about, because they're never 7 again.
And by the time that you've got time to spend with them, they are grown up, running around, and they're never with you then.
Yep, cat's in the cradle, right?
I was just going to say that.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
And we all say that. Well, there's time, right? And I learned, unfortunately, very quickly that we had to live every day like it was the last, because there was no time.
Right.
And you begin to appreciate the little things more. Okay, I had one woman who's no longer my friend actually telling me, he didn't buy you anything and that could have been his last Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, And when you're dealing with people that are like that, I think of the Grinch.
Yep.
Okay, is that all it's about? Is going to the, and there's nothing that he could have gotten because he couldn't walk as well at that point. He would have just gone to get anything, and that's not what we want. We want something special. So I tell everyone, COVID or not, there are many times you're not going to know it, but it may be the last Christmas you see Aunt Zelda or, Uncle George, and try to make the holiday the most positive you can with the people you can have at your house.
Right.
And do something memorable.
Yeah.
Even if it's going outside and looking at the sky. Do something that you've never done before. That's the spirit of Christmas. You don't have to think. I mean, I used to love going to midnight mass. Why? Because it was so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only time of year you can do that. So that's what I suggest to people. Though I love Krampus, make the Christmas work for you.
Yeah. That's like.
Well, I mean, this year there's you can drive around and look at Christmas lights, and don't forget, folks, on the 21st, look to the southwest. It'll be Jupiter and Saturn, the only conjunction in 600 years, and it's going to be beautiful.
Now, you say you look to the southwest?
Yes, at night.
Okay, at night. But do you have, West Coast timeline would be different.
You do not need binoculars. It will be amazing.
Really? Okay.
Right.
As long as it's dark.
As long as it's dark.
All right.
And what date is that? December
21st.
21st.
Oh,
Solstice.
on the solstice of all places.
December 21st. I will be looking.
So that's magic, Lillee, right there.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
For me in this area, whether I was in Minnesota or here, Christmas is the time you can see, sometimes, if you're lucky, the most beautiful thing to me in the world was the Aurora Borealis. And now you can even watch cams showing it, far better than you could even get a glimpse of it.
Mm.
And isn't that a miracle? Isn't that amazing? Yes,
Yeah,
we know how it's caused and why it's caused, right? But
Yeah.
it's still amazing. Enjoy.
Yeah, when I was stationed in North Dakota, at night I'd be having to run out to some of the missile sites or out that way, picking up a vehicle that had broke down or something like that, and you would be able to see the northern lights in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Once you've
Oh, yeah.
seen it, it haunts you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see it again and again.
It's very beautiful. Yeah.
So, I mean, when we get down to it, really, the holidays are about, which is basically trying to get in touch with that childhood magic again, where we didn't know all the facts, but it was fun to anticipate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As a child, I think that's what Christmas is really for the kids. So in Europe now, is it still so much Krampus, or are they bringing Santa Claus into the factor?
Well, if you listen to the one of my favorite bands, Rammstein, and you listen to America, they, nationalists in Germany don't really want our version of Santa Claus. They have their own. Okay? And so, have we taken over a lot of traditions? Sure. People have adopted it, and sometimes it's been forced on them. I mean, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. But I don't think you can ever get rid of the magic of whether you want to call him Saint Nick, Santa Claus, any of the stories, okay? I think it's beautiful the way it is. And, the whole coming of the light, whether you want to look at St. Lucia or any of these things, beautiful, beautiful things. And why we need, as, experts far smarter than I have said, we need ritual in our lives, okay? And we need to remember and relink. And that's what makes Christmas so awesome. And telling you as a widow, I look at Christmas as a kid. I will go and get my little Snickers tree. Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
And I will eat it very happily. I'll get the pups something. And you make it what it is. You can go outside for a walk, and, you know, it's just so quiet. And some of the neighborhoods still have the little lights that they put on outside,
Sure.
you know, in the bag with the sand.
Right.
And how beautiful is that? And that's magical, right? And that's what Christmas is about. I think one of the things that a lot of people are going to miss is whether you go to the soup kitchen and work or whether you go to church, you're missing that aspect of community. But we've all been missing a lot of aspects of family. And this may be quite the wake-up call for people to realize that you want and need family if you're lucky enough to have it. And when you have it, you've got to cherish it because eventually it will be gone.
Yes. And in case people is wondering, Barbara wants a Christmas tree of peeps.
That's an
peeps
interesting
build
Christmas tree.
A Christmas peep. Yeah.
The Christmas peep, yes.
Yes, the Christmas peep.
However,
I
there are no holiday peeps this year because of COVID. So
Really? None at all?
Yep.
Huh. I've seen some somewhere. I know I did.
there may be some old ones around there, but they're all in production now for the spring peeps. But
Wow.
But think of this way. If you've waited this long,
Yeah.
Easter peeps are going to be good.
oh, I don't eat them, but
No, she
You
don't eat them.
You just like to look at them.
I
I eat 'em.
photograph them. Yeah.
Okay.
Get on Amazon. I'm sure you can find some. Take pictures
Oh,
of it.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I would eat them if I got them, last year's peeps.
Yeah.
Just
Go
saying,
stale
they
for
might be a little
dark
not tasty, might be a little hard, but each to his own.
very much. But yeah, it's interesting that in a day of modern technology, that everybody knows Krampus is not real.
Right.
But we still need him to a certain degree because we need that association of life, right brain, left brain. We need fact, but we also need the ideal.
Yes.
You say.
Well, I'll give you another example that I think is huge, okay? How many of you left out milk and cookies for Santa?
Back when
Anyone
I was
do that?
little,
Yeah,
probably.
Okay. Did you ever come down and find the cookie bitten?
No.
Oh.
Well, I had parents, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I would often find the cookie bitten. Okay, now whether they let the dog bite it or they took a bite themselves, I don't know. But the cookie was usually bitten and the milk looked like it had gone down. Probably the cat got some milk that day. But I'm just telling you, think about it. Once you're 10, it's all out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
But when you're 5 and you leave the milk and cookies for Santa,
Yep.
and you find a bite, it makes you wonder.
Mm-hmm.
You'll argue with your older siblings. And remember, parents encourage children to leave the cookies because that way, and this was started, by the way, during the Depression, that you should also be grateful for the things you're given. And giving was just as important as receiving.
Yes.
Okay? So it sounds like a cute little custom. Oh, we'll leave cookies for Santa. But there was another tale for children.
Yeah, I would eat all my cookies.
Even the ones you left for Santa?
There probably wasn't any left to leave for Santa.
Poor Santa.
No, really. But Krampus never. I mean, the Krampus never had offerings left for him, correct?
Well, I think I've heard different stories that kids tried to,
Right,
maybe
their way up.
bribe Krampus, but we never knew what Krampus liked. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe you could leave a beer for Krampus, but I never left anything for Krampus. I was hoping that I would end up with St. Nicholas, and I really didn't want to find a little thing of branches on my plate. So yeah, no, it's almost like, think of it this way, it would almost be like welcoming him in, and you don't want to do that.
Okay. So no bribing your way out of trouble.
Yes. Now, do either of you know the story of why we have stockings?
That's where they would leave, I guess the early kids, that's where they would get their presents at, was in the stockings.
Before that, what caused it to be stockings?
Well,
They
that's
probably
usually where
didn't-
they would dry them out
Yeah,
by the fire. When
Right. But this goes back to the 4th century. Ready for the story?
I would assume they didn't have a tree, and so therefore they just had stockings.
Well, there would always have been a tree in the Bavarian area
Oh,
because that was pre-Christian.
oh,
But in the 4th century, a bishop overheard an elderly man crying. He didn't have enough money to supply his 3 daughters with a dowry. Now, this is from Donald Dossey's book, all right, on holiday folklore. At the time, in the 4th century, women who didn't have a dowry would not be accepted by any male and often ended up in prostitution because there was no other way to support themselves. So the legend goes that this bishop, St. Nicholas, was so moved by this man's plight, he crept into the family's home at night and filled their stockings with bags of gold.
wow.
They had hung up their stockings by the fireplace to dry. The 3 women and their father lived happily ever after. The bishop would later be anointed St. Nicholas, the patron saint of children, and one of the inspirations for our today's Santa Claus.
Wow.
So all
I've
this time
never
I
found
should have
gold in
hung
my
up the
stocking.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lily. I never had that either.
Yeah, I haven't found gold in my stocking yet. There's always a chance.
I don't know. I've got my stocking hanging up already, but I don't think there's anything in it.
Well, yeah, it works that way, doesn't it? But I think that's an amazing story, but how many kids don't know that story?
I didn't
And
know it.
don't know that's what it came from.
Yeah, I didn't
was
know it.
this year's old when I found that out. So
See?
Well, you got gold
So-
in your stocking?
no,
No.
I wish.
I would probably have holes in my stocking at that point. But yeah, it's,
well, there was a tale. There was a tale of somebody who allegedly sold their soul. One of the Satan stories is he sold his soul to the devil. That he would come. The Satan would fill a stocking, or his boots actually, with gold. And when the guy got in his head, what if I took the bottoms out of these? And after pouring tons, like, why isn't this filling up? He realized, all right, that's just wrong. And he figured a breach of contract and took the guy immediately.
that's an awful story. See, now but Krampus might tell you that was naughty. That's gluttony,
yeah.
right?
Agreed, I would think.
Yeah,
Unless
agreed.
you're eating the gold.
I don't know. Were they eating the gold?
Yeah, really.
Might as well have been.
Probably had to
The
use
beauty about Krampus seems to me that he is literally that down-to-earth character
Yes.
that isn't going to put up with any of that. You did that to me? Pff, sorry, kid. I'm on to you.
Yep.
And he is that earth elemental being that doesn't put up with anything.
Right. You've been naughty. And as I was raised, there are consequences consequences for every action and reaction. Oh no. That's usually when they found out he did something bad.
Right.
When I got the consequences lecture.
Somebody in the chat room wants to know if you've ever heard of somebody leaving schnapps out for Krampus.
Yes, I have heard those stories. Now, in today's world, you really can't have your kids playing with schnapps.
True.
But in Germany, it would be a lot easier for children to be around beer. It's just a different culture again.
Right.
And maybe Russian children leave vodka. You never know.
It's schnapps and ginger cake.
Yeah, ginger cake is always good. Our gingerbread men.
Oh, yeah, true.
Wow.
Very true. But so, you know, it's almost the dichotomy of Krampus versus Santa Claus, because you have that down to earth, this is what happens when you do bad things, but you need to aspire to the Santa.
Right, because remember, Santa, based on St. Nicholas, was a man who gave his all for his community.
Right.
Okay, so these are lessons, again, of the golden rule, do unto others as you do to the...
As you would have others do unto you.
do unto
Yeah.
you. It was funny because I was talking with a young person recently, and I said, remember the golden rule? And they said, what? Leaves of 3, let it be? And I was like, yes and no. And, you know, so sometimes we do need to reiterate certain things. And, you know, if anything, COVID has taught us, it's that do unto others as you would want to be done unto you.
Sure.
You know, if you have any kind of symptoms, right? You don't go wandering out and kissing everybody.
No.
You try to, you know, self-contain yourself until...
As much as we want to.
Yeah. Some people don't care though.
Those who don't care have not had it. I will tell you that.
But
We're seeing it.
if they keep on, they're going to catch it. Yeah.
And one can only hope, though, that they will survive well.
Right.
Okay? But the older you are, like with the flu, the harder it can be on the body. And especially if you have coexisting conditions when you get that. I had a rough time of it. It's not fun. Okay? And I got it from people who didn't know they had it. Because way back in the beginning, nobody knew anything about it.
Right.
Okay, in a lot of ways that was good, and in a lot of ways wasn't so good. But we need to think about that at this Christmas, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, be polite. Don't rush the malls the night before when you know you may be bringing back a different gift for your kids.
Yes.
Okay?
The wrong
You
kind.
want to do everything you
the gift that
can.
will keep on giving.
Yeah.
It's actually worse than the fruitcake. Think about it.
Oh, Henry loves fruitcake.
No,
You know
I do not
that we
love
had a
fruitcake.
We had a fruitcake that went around our family for 17 years.
The same fruitcake?
It became an ongoing joke. Yes.
It probably lasted too. Them things are soaked in
did.
alcohol.
Nobody would eat it by that time. And on the bottom, one of my cousins had put, are you ready? Originally given to by, and then the next one, and the next one.
Oh my.
And it was just hysterical because one aunt loved these fruitcakes. And next to mince pie, it was the most hated thing that would ever come in the door. So one of my cousins decided that this would be the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
And inevitably, it would be given back to the aunt, who would then gift it to someone else. And so, remember Hot Potato, that game?
Oh,
There
yeah.
you go.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Became a performance art piece.
Yes, it did. And it was hysterical. But, I mean, it really, and these are the things. Your family can make traditions. Don't think you have to go on the originals.
Oh, yeah.
You can have funny, happy traditions. You will be making memories for your kids and yourself and, you know, your relatives. Be creative this Christmas time.
Well, every family has their own version of their own traditions. My dad's family had what we call the walnut story, which was a family tale that my grandmother told every Christmas, no matter how often her kids said, "Mom, we know this. We know it by heart." And I grew up with the story, and I knew it by heart as well. So whenever we refer to something that a tale that one family member constantly retells, we just call that a walnut story.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that doesn't work so well when someone has Alzheimer's, though, when you get the same stories. Is that like a whole bag of walnuts?
No, the story goes is that my father was the middle of 7 children. They were they were not affluent in any way. And that one Christmas, they rushed downstairs to their stockings, and all the kids were playing with what toys they did have under the tree. Uncle Bill went into his stockings and he pulled out like a toy train. He put it aside. He put a little toy boat, put that aside. And finally he reached down to the very toe of the stocking was a walnut that he pulled out and said, "Yes, that's what I wanted for Christmas." And my grandma would tell that story every year as though no one had heard it. And they're like, "Oh, we know this story."
Oh, that is adorable. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have that on my website. I have a glossary of weird stuff in my life, and walnut story, the story every family tells, and I related it, and I actually wrote it up in haiku.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
Well, there are tales of fruitcake and mince pies in chat. I have never gathered in courage to eat a minced pie because I simply just don't know what it is.
We used to say it with rat tails and all kinds of things to gross each other out. I wouldn't do it. It just doesn't taste right.
Oh, yeah.
Just wrong.
Like Lisa Simpson's vision of what's in a hot dog.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, one of the most hated gifts to get, I guess, for Christmas was people would go to the malls and they would buy these. It come in a package, a box, and it would have different cheeses and different canned meats and stuff like that. I forget what they're called, but they're in a package and just give them to people. You get it.
Oh, but they're so good. I loved the Hickory Farms one.
That's ones I was talking about. Yeah.
Yep. I loved that. I know some people didn't like them, but I loved them, especially if they had the oxtail soup. And then my father and I would fight over the summer sausage.
Now, summer sausage I liked. That was usually pretty good with the crackers.
Yep. And the cheese. Cheese was always good.
Yep. I mean, I'd eat them, but a lot of people hated them.
Oh, I know. But you know what? People complain all the time.
Sure.
You know, and if you think about it, you know, wasn't it nice that someone cared enough that you'd have a meal?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And remember, they were usually big enough for your family. Sometimes they had nuts in them. And sometimes they even had candy in them.
Yeah,
and it's a kind thought.
Uh-huh.
Okay, for relatives you rarely see, they don't know what you like. And it's easier on them to go and get something they know the whole family will at least benefit from.
Right.
I think people get too critical about gifts.
They do. They do. And they don't realize that somebody spent the money to buy it for you.
Yep.
Yeah. And you shouldn't holler about what you get. It's the thought. Somebody giving you something.
Well, John used to tell a story that always cracked me up, was that he and his aunt were very close. And for the holidays, she would always give him his gifts on Christmas Eve, and she gave him a blue sweater and a green sweater, okay? And he wanted to make sure that she realized that he appreciated it. So he wore the green sweater on Christmas Day to the family party. And what do you think her response was? Oh, you
didn't like the blue one?
I'll take it back. I'll take it back to Filene's. You don't like the blue one. And, you know, throughout the dinner, he had to explain to her that he couldn't have worn 2 sweaters.
Wow.
Ooh.
So,
2 hours went fast.
What time frame did Krampus operate in? Was it always before Christmas, or was Krampus a year-round thing?
Krampus could be whatever the family wanted, but in my family, it was clearly just the night of the 5th.
Okay.
A lot of families, it was the night of the 5th. But the story can work. Remember, you're trying to get your kids to behave until Christmas Eve.
Ah,
So if you need babysitting from the older kids, if you need, more work in the field, whatever, this is the time, get it done because you've got control.
Advent is actually prevent.
Yes. Very good way of putting it.
yes. Prevent them from being bad.
Yes. You'll have at least a month of not so much crises.
Ah.
And
Doesn't
depending on what's
work
in the
with law.
Advent calendars, it could very well be.
A Krampus calendar. We could make a lot of money on those.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That would be kind of cool.
We got to get with Marla and think of ways we can do that.
Okay.
So I'll tell you, Krampus, I've tried that with my dogs, and it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, I got 2 kitty cats. Nothing bothers them.
No,
They're
I tell them, why are you doing this? Krampus is coming.
Yeah.
And they look at me and what? Cesar? Yeah.
Do I get
Bowl?
something to eat?
Yeah, bowl.
All right, our time is running right on down, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. I'm going to let you tell everybody, because you do a show here on ParaX Now, and I want you to tell everybody how they can listen to you and what the show's about.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on. I do New Aeon Now with Davron Michaels and Christine Motza from 10 to 11 on Thursday nights, and that's Eastern Time. And this week we are talking about the dark side of Christmas. And then next week after that, we will be having Christmas with COVID. And we're encouraging everybody to come, and it's going to be lighthearted so we can look at the good aspects of the holiday in the worst aspects of a situation.
And that's this Thursday?
This Thursday will be Dark Christmas.
Oh, dark?
Yes.
Dark Christmas.
Dark side of all those things that you thought were lovely stories.
You should definitely try and find rare exports and enjoy that.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm looking for pfeffernuss cookies that I have not found yet. And usually I can find them on Thanksgiving Day.
And
so
what kind of cookies are those?
they're white powdered cookies that have I want to say spice inside. And you usually get them like our Wegmans gets them. And I haven't seen them yet.
Are they like a German cookie?
Yes, they are.
Okay. We got a store.
They're kind of peppery, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
We got a store here in Hamilton, and it's called Jungle Gyms. And you go in there, they have all kinds of cookies and food from Germany. And you go back, they have a whole another section that has food from Switzerland or Sweden and all those places. They got different types of food from all them places. So you can get on Amazon and you can find those German cookies on Amazon.
That's a happy story.
Yes.
Yeah.
With that, our time has run out, and I want you to stay on until after we're off. Well, thank you. This is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And Barbara Duncan.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So, good night, everybody. You've been listening to The Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of The Paranormal View.